Most fans thought trading for LaMelo Ball was Minnesota's biggest move of the offseason. They were wrong. Just hours later, the Timberwolves made another trade that could change everything. And the reason behind it is even more surprising. The NBA offseason had barely started when Minnesota swung again. Just as the dust was settling from the 2026 NBA draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves went out Thursday morning and made a shocking trade that saw the Wolves send out Naz Reid, their 2033 unprotected first-round pick, 3 first-round pick swaps, and 3 second-round picks in exchange for LaMelo Ball and Josh Green. The whole thing came together so fast that even some people close to the league couldn't believe it was real. Rumors had circulated on June 24th that the Charlotte Hornets were considering moving LaMelo, and Minnesota was the perceived frontrunner. It didn't take long for a deal to come to fruition. The two sides agreed to terms less than 24 hours later, according to ESPN's Shams Charania. Less than a full day from rumor to done deal. That's how determined Tim Connelly was to get this done. And here's what makes this so significant. The Timberwolves now have the nose 1 and 3 pick in the 2020 NBA draft in their starting backcourt. Anthony Edwards at 1, LaMelo at 3. 2 generational talents drafted within 2 spots of each other, now on the same team. The idea alone is enough to send basketball Twitter into a spiral. Ball averaged 20.1 points, 7.1 assists, and 4.8 rebounds per game, while shooting 36.8% from three-point range and 40.7% from the floor during the 2025-26 season. That's a guy who just put together one of his best professional seasons, being handed the keys to a contender's backcourt, and the reaction inside the Timberwolves organization. A Wolves source told The Athletic's John Krasinski, "He's going to make everybody better." That was the thing that was missing. That sentence tells you everything about how Minnesota's front office sees this deal. They weren't just adding a player, they were solving a problem that's been eating away at this team for 2 years. Having never played alongside an all-star during his 6-year tenure with the Charlotte Hornets, LaMelo Ball is relishing the chance to do so as he is set to team up with Anthony Edwards. Think about that. 6 years. 6 years of being the best player on a team that kept falling short. Now he walks into a genuine contender. The NBA world did not see this coming. Just days after the Miami Heat won the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, ending a years-long saga over the 2-time MVP's future, the Charlotte Hornets stunned the basketball world by trading star guard LaMelo Ball to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was that kind of week in the NBA, a week where billion-dollar franchise decisions were made back-to-back, like someone was playing on a video game setting that doesn't exist in real life. Rumors of Charlotte shopping their all-star point guard first emerged during the second round of the NBA draft Wednesday, and a line of aggressive suitors reportedly emerged quickly. Minnesota won that bidding war, and they won it fast. But this wasn't out of nowhere for Connelly. After years of pursuing Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and most recently checking in on Jaylen Brown, the Timberwolves' president of basketball operations had found his second superstar to pair with Anthony Edwards. The man has been chasing a co-star for Ant since basically the moment Edwards proved he was a franchise cornerstone. Every summer, a new chase. This summer, finally, a landing. Reports later confirmed that the Timberwolves' LaMelo Ball trade efforts date back 2 years. 2 years of groundwork. 2 years of scouting, conversations, and intel gathering. All of it culminating in a Thursday morning phone call that changed the Western Conference. And the Hornets, they didn't need convincing. Charlotte didn't shop Ball in the market, but listened and received multiple rich offers. That's a nuanced but important detail. They weren't trying to move him. They were approached, and what they heard was compelling enough that they decided the time was right. Minnesota made an offer Charlotte felt it couldn't sit on. Per ESPN's Shams Charania, the Hornets will send Ball and Josh Green to Minnesota in exchange for Naz Reid, an unprotected first-round pick in 2033, 3 first-round pick swaps in 2028, 2029, and 2030, and 3 second-round picks in 2029, 2032, and 2033. It's a pick-heavy haul going to Charlotte, and a risk-on, win-now bet going to Minnesota. Now here's the context that makes this move even bigger. The Timberwolves' back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances in 2024 and 2025 saw them go a combined 2-8. Then they followed that up by losing to the San Antonio Spurs in 6 games in the second round this past season. 3 deep playoff runs, 0 conference championships, and every time they fell short, the team's offensive limitations were right there at the center of it. When they faced Oklahoma City in the 2025 Western Conference Finals, outside of their Game 3 blowout, They lost 4 games by 73 combined points, and when Victor Wembanyama was on the floor in the second round this season, the Spurs outscored the Timberwolves by 79 points. Those aren't close defeats. Those are statements. The conference's best teams weren't just beating Minnesota. They were exposing a real structural gap. And that gap had a name. Playmaking had been Minnesota's biggest weakness as Mike Conley declined. The only player on last year's roster to average at least 10 points created off assists per game was Julius Randle, and he is now gone. Only the Clippers averaged fewer potential assists per game than the Timberwolves. This offense had been screaming for a real point guard. Now it has one. Ball immediately addresses one of the Timberwolves' biggest needs. While Anthony Edwards had developed into one of the NBA's elite scorers, Minnesota had lacked a true playmaking point guard since Mike Conley began slowing down. That sentence sums up the whole trade in 2 lines. So this is Minnesota striking again and meaning it. The Timberwolves didn't just make a splash, they made a statement. After back-to-back trips deep into the Western Conference playoffs and a second-round exit this year, Minnesota clearly decided it wasn't close enough to seriously challenge the Thunder or Spurs. So President of Basketball Operations Tim Connelly did what he's rarely been afraid to do. He took another big swing. This time, he landed all-star guard LaMelo Ball. The Minnesota Timberwolves are clearly trying to win a championship now, and they haven't been shy about taking the massive risks needed to capture the title. That's the overarching story. But to understand why it matters this much, and why the stakes are this high, you have to understand what was happening with Anthony Edwards in the days before this trade dropped. Because this wasn't just a basketball decision. 2 ESPN insiders tied Edwards' frustration directly to Minnesota's roster decisions, and that shifted the conversation around the franchise's most important player. The Timberwolves weren't just building a better team. They were answering a warning signal. And you don't fire off 2 blockbuster moves in 48 hours unless that signal is loud. ESPN's Tim McMahon said, "The NBA vultures are swirling around Ant in anticipation of him potentially becoming the next superstar who's available in the trade market." The vultures were circling. Minnesota just sent them a message. This is where the story starts. The Timberwolves were at it again in the days surrounding the 2026 NBA draft, jettisoning Randle and their 2026 first-round pick, in a move that helped open the door for the biggest splash of all. That first move, the Randle dump, was the setup. The LaMelo deal was the main event. And according to insiders, more moves are still coming. But to understand all of that, you need to know what was burning underneath the surface of this organization, even before the draft. The thing about Anthony Edwards is that he didn't just become a star. He became one of the best players in the entire NBA. During his 2025-26 campaign, Edwards averaged a career-high 28.8 points, to go along with 5.0 rebounds and 3.7 assists per game. He shot 48.9% from the field and 39.9% from three-point territory. Those are not numbers from a guy who needs help. They're numbers from a guy who's been carrying a team that couldn't carry itself. And the gap between what he was producing and what the team was achieving had started to sting. Edwards just completed the best season of his career. He earned his 4th consecutive All-Star selection and captured All-Star Game MVP honors. Yet despite his growth into one of the league's premier stars, the Timberwolves finished only 49-33 and entered the playoffs as the number 6 seed. The number 6 seed on a career-best season. You can see the problem, and the whispers started before the draft even opened. The Minnesota Timberwolves had barely had time to process the Julius Randle blockbuster before a new wave of speculation was already crashing down around them, centered on their most prized possession, Anthony Edwards. League insiders sounded the alarm that the NBA's opportunistic franchises were already circling, with prominent reporter Tim McMahon delivering a stark warning. Brian Windhorst suggested that Edwards' frustration had been building since the Timberwolves dealt Karl Anthony Towns to the Knicks in 2024, saying Ant was really frustrated throughout, really just been frustrated since Towns got traded at how he gets double-teamed, adding, they have to do something this offseason about addressing the Ant double-team situation. That's an ESPN insider essentially laying out the Wolves' offseason to-do list on a podcast. And the double-team problem, it's real. Since Karl Anthony Towns was shipped out, opposing defenses have had no reason to respect anyone else on the floor, the way they respected that pairing. Teams have made Edwards their singular defensive focus, throwing double teams at him relentlessly and forcing the ball out of his hands in critical moments. Towns' gravity, His ability to pull big defenders to the perimeter and open lanes was irreplaceable. And the roster built around Randle and Rudy Gobert just couldn't replicate that. Although Minnesota had made it back to the conference finals with Julius Randle, its lack of a primary ball handler made it impossible for Anthony Edwards to operate. That's two separate problems layered on top of each other. No gravity stretcher and no playmaker. The result was Edwards grinding through endless double teams with no relief valve. Night after night, playoff after playoff. Windhorst didn't stop there, and the Randle move didn't exactly calm things down. It's not so much Randle being traded. It's about Randle being traded as a salary dump. Windhorst explained. That's the key phrase. A salary dump signals desperation or, at best, a front office scrambling to create flexibility. And when you're the franchise player watching your team dismantle itself to find cap space, you need to see a clear vision on the other end of that move. After back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances in 2024 and 2025, the Wolves were knocked out of the playoffs in the second round this season. On Monday, they sent Julius Randle and the No. 28 pick in the 2026 NBA Draft to the Brooklyn Nets in a three-team deal that also involved the Chicago Bulls. The Timberwolves only took back the No. 33 pick in that deal, but created plenty of cap space. They immediately used much of it to give Ayo Dosunmu a 5-year, $112 million extension, and it seemed as though both he and Naz Reid would take steps up the depth chart. Now, Reid is gone too, which leaves a big hole in the Wolves' frontcourt, and Dosunmu will likely remain in a bench role. The organization reshuffled the entire deck in 72 hours. But there's a flip side to this frustration story. There is faith in the team and in President of Basketball Operations Tim Connelly that it will continue to contend for a championship, with the front office needing to make moves to take some of the pressure off Edwards. The people closest to him weren't sounding alarm bells about a departure. They were watching to see what the front office would do next. The Timberwolves were not facing an immediate Edwards crisis. They were facing a roster test. Pass the test, and the frustration fades. Fail it, and the vultures circling get louder. So what did the organization do with that ultimatum hanging in the air? They went and got LaMelo Ball. Ball can be the playmaker Edwards hasn't had to relieve defensive pressure in high-leverage half-court situations. Edwards' strengths as a passer and on-ball defender and the presence of Gobert will in turn give Ball more open three-point shots and allow Minnesota to hide Ball on defense. On paper, this pairing hits almost every single pain point that Windhorst and McMahon laid out. A real playmaker, a ball handler, a guy defenses can't ignore. Passing is the closest thing Edwards still has to a weakness. He's become a lethal, high-volume three-point shooter, and last season grew by leaps and bounds as a mid-range shot maker. Those are the sort of shots you need to win late in games, but you need easier offense for the rest of them. Ball can set up teammates for the first 43 minutes, and then Edwards can finish the job late. That's a division of labor that actually makes sense, and the Wolves know it. Chris Hine of the Minnesota Star-Tribune reported, "I think the best way to sum it up is this. The Wolves, through their scouting and intel gathering on Ball for years, formed a much different opinion than the public perception of Ball. They're betting they're correct." That's the confidence talking. Minnesota believes they see something in LaMelo that the public misses. Whether they're right, that's the whole story. For the first time in his career, Ball will be competing on a team with championship aspirations, where his actions and his play will be under a much larger microscope. That's the pressure of the situation. He's not the face of a rebuilding franchise anymore. He's the second star on a team that needs to win now. So the frustration story ends here, at least for now. The question becomes, will Ball be the missing piece to take Edwards and the Timberwolves to the next level, or will he be the final domino that sinks the ship and drives their franchise centerpiece away? We'll start to find out in a few months when Ball and Edwards finally take the court. But before we get to that question, we need to understand how Minnesota got here in the first place. Because this isn't just a story about one off season. It's a story about a franchise that has been remaking itself, aggressively, controversially, for 4 consecutive years. The Timberwolves have been here before. Not in terms of landing LaMelo Ball, that's new, but in terms of making a move so big that the whole league pauses and wonders what they're doing. That's almost become a tradition in Minnesota under Tim Connelly. They stunned the league 4 years ago by trading a 2022 first-round pick and 4 future first-round draft picks to acquire center Rudy Gobert. They shocked even their own locker room 2 years later. by trading Karl Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks in a 3-team deal that brought back Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. They were added again in the days surrounding the 2026 NBA Draft, jettisoning Randle and their 2026 first-round pick, in a move that helped open the door for the biggest splash of all. That Gobert trade set the template. The league thought Minnesota was crazy. 4 first-round picks for a center who'd never been to the conference finals. It was the most assets anyone had ever given up for a single player in recent memory. But what happened next? Back-to-back Western Conference Finals. The first time Minnesota had been that deep in the playoffs in 2 decades. The crazy trade worked, at least in terms of making the Wolves relevant again. Though the Wolves have never won a title, they've been extremely successful with Gobert and made back-to-back Western Conference Finals in 2024 and 2025. Ahead of the 2024-25 season, Connelly sent Karl Anthony Towns, another extremely popular player, to the New York Knicks in exchange for Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, and a future first-round pick. Connelly found a formula: shock the league, bet on it anyway, and see what happens in May. But the Towns trade became the painful one. That move hadn't panned out. Towns just won a title with the Knicks. They had to salary dump Randle, and DiVincenzo tore his Achilles tendon in the playoffs last season. That's a brutal 3-part summary. The guy they traded away won a championship with his new team. The guy they got was salary dumped a year later. And the other piece they got blew out his Achilles in the worst possible moment, the playoffs. It's clear the Timberwolves would like a mulligan on that decision. Alexander Walker is the most improved player winner, while both Randle and Reed are now off the team entirely after 2 blockbuster trades. The other player they let walk in free agency that same summer won most improved player. It was a rough stretch of roster decisions, and they happened to all land in the same offseason recap. So Connelly was under pressure, real pressure. If there were any questions about whether the outcome of the Towns-Randle deal would change Connelly's approach, they have been answered emphatically with the Ball acquisition. This is arguably the riskiest move he has made, and it will be fascinating to see how it pans out. He's not backing off, he's doubling down. After a trade that backfired, he made an even bigger one. They typically target players who have high character and great work ethic, so this stunning acquisition of Ball marks a stark deviation from that standard. That line deserves a slow read. The Timberwolves under Connelly have built their identity around work ethic and reliability. LaMelo, who had questions about everything from his shot selection to his commitment to defense, is a departure from that culture. That's not nothing, but the moment demanded something different. The Spurs and Thunder have simply broken the scale in the Western Conference. They are so good and so young and so asset-rich that competing with them as a normal team, especially one as asset-poor as Minnesota made itself through various roster decisions, had become near impossible. The normal path forward didn't exist anymore. The Thunder and Spurs had lapped the field. You don't catch them by being careful. Championship contenders rarely play it safe. The Timberwolves looked at a loaded Western Conference and decided standing pat wasn't enough. Whether this move ultimately works remains to be seen. One thing is already clear though. Minnesota is pushing all of its chips toward the middle of the table. All in. That's the only way to describe what Connelly did this week. And the LaMelo pursuit wasn't spur of the moment. The Charlotte Hornets hadn't been actively shopping their star point guard, but discussions with multiple interested teams were reportedly gaining momentum. According to a report from NBA insiders Mark Stein and Jake Fisher, the Minnesota Timberwolves were among those that had explored a potential deal for Ball. The Wolves had been in these waters for a while, watching, probing, building a framework for what a deal might look like. Minnesota remained unwilling to include certain players in trade negotiations, most notably two-way forward Jaden McDaniels. They knew their floor. They protected their most valuable defensive piece. McDaniels wasn't going anywhere. Naz Reid, though, he was the piece that opened the door. And here's where the chessboard gets fascinating. The hardest part about this trade for Timberwolves fans was parting with Reid, who was pretty easily the second most popular player on the roster behind Edwards. He was not only the Wolves' longest tenured player, he was a fan favorite and something of a cult hero in Minnesota. From towels to tattoos and so much more, it's hard to describe the kind of special relationship that formed between Reid and the city of Minneapolis. His rise from being an undrafted free agent without a clear position to winning Sixth Man of the Year and earning a massive contract was incredible to watch. It's particularly tough to think about the fact that he never got his chance to start for the Wolves. He was on track to finally receive that opportunity after Julius Randle was traded on Monday night. 3 days. He had 3 days of being the guy who was supposed to step into the starting lineup, and then he was gone too. From 2022-23 to 2024-25, ankle issues have been the primary reason for his injury woes. He's played a full season twice in 6 years, in 2021-22, his All-Star season, and again this past season. In total, Ball has played in 303 of the Hornets, 482 regular season games in his career, 63%. So if you bought tickets to every Hornets game during the LaMelo era, there was a 1 in 3 chance you watched him sit on the bench in street clothes. That's not a small thing for a team that's counting on him to solve its offensive crisis. And the questions don't stop at health. There are also questions about Ball's game when he's healthy and on the court. Shot selection is one of them. Ball has been a bit of a shot chucker throughout his career. Over the past 4 seasons, he has an overall shooting percentage of 41% on 19 attempts per game. Over 10 of those attempts come from 3, where he's shot 36%. That's elite volume with imperfect efficiency. He can catch fire and look unstoppable, or he can go ice cold and still keep launching. Ball can get ridiculously hot from deep and hit 7 or 8 threes in a game. He's also very capable of going 1 for 9 from deep. That variance is the LaMelo experience in a nutshell. The ceiling is breathtaking. The floor is a head scratcher. Then there's the defense. There have been criticisms throughout Ball's career about his lack of defensive ability. Hornets head coach Charles Lee even made a point of saying he wanted to challenge the point guard on that end of the floor when he first got the job. When your own coach, before the season even starts, singles you out as someone who needs to improve on defense, that tells you something. Lee tried. Ball's defensive numbers never became a strength. Though he played 72 games last season, he only suited up for 105 combined in the 3 seasons prior. He's never played much defense. If Anthony Edwards is on another team in the next few years, this trade blowing up in Minnesota's face is probably going to be the reason why. That last sentence is hard to read, but it's not wrong. If this doesn't work, LaMelo Ball is the reason. That's the weight of the bet Minnesota just made. But here's what makes the risk complicated, because LaMelo did something different last season. The Hornets, after starting 4-14 last season, went 40-24 the rest of the way, and emerged as the NBA's best offense after January 1st. Their 44 wins were their most since 2016, and while they ultimately fell short of the playoffs with an embarrassing loss to the Orlando Magic in the final round of the play-in tournament, they were a team on the rise with a thrilling young core. LaMelo was the engine of all of that. The turnaround from 4-14 to playoff contender, that was him. The closest he's gotten to the postseason is this year's play-in tournament, when he had 30 points and 10 assists in a dramatic win over the Heat, before Charlotte was blown out by the Magic in the game that decided the 8th seed. 30-10 in a must-win game. He didn't crumble under pressure. He was the best player on the floor in that moment. That's a data point worth remembering, and Minnesota's analysts saw all of this coming. According to Chris Hine of the Minnesota Star-Tribune, the Wolves rave about LaMelo Ball as a teammate and say he will have a positive impact on the organization. They said there is an intense competitor there that can emerge. He was the engine to one of the best offenses in the league, Hine wrote. That intense competitor framing is deliberate. The public perception of LaMelo is a guy who plays when he feels like it. The Wolves are betting that perception is wrong, that the competitive edge is real, just untested in the right environment. Put him on a contender with Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. That might be the environment that unlocks it. The fit on paper is genuinely exciting. The 6'7" Ball is a uniquely gifted playmaker who loves to push the pace and puts tremendous pressure on the defense. Moreover, he's a gifted scorer himself, which will make it more difficult for opposing defenses to gear their entire game plan toward Edwards. That right there is the answer to the double team problem. You can't pack the paint against both of them. You can't send help over the top without leaving shooters open. Ball's presence alone changes the calculus for every defense they'll face. LaMelo, being one of the best passers in the game, should elevate Gobert's offense. Once he gets into the paint, he's a threat to score. Throw a lob to Gobert, or kick it out to Ant, Ayo, or Jaden, who will all space the floor as elite three-point shooters. Ayo, Jaden, and Ant were all shooting above 39% from 3 last season. Now add a point guard who averaged 7.1 assists per game. and see what those numbers look like. The contract situation adds another layer. Ball has 3 years and more than $130 million remaining on the 5-year, $203.9 million max rookie extension. He signed with the Hornets in 2023. He's also eligible to sign a 2-year extension with the Timberwolves, worth an additional $119 million beginning next month. So Minnesota needs to decide, do they lock him up for the long term, or do they wait and see? Given how aggressively they just traded to get him, you'd guess they lean toward locking him in. But that extension will tell the real story. With Ball, Edwards, and Gobert accounting for more than $100 million worth of cap space, the Timberwolves are essentially tying themselves to this iteration of the team for the next 2 seasons at least. If Ball is unable to become more efficient and conduct himself in the manner of a veteran player who is serious about winning, then this move could prove to be a disaster. There won't be many ways to improve the team other than making drastic changes, so this enormous gamble needs to pay off. And the picks they sent away, those carry consequences too. The 2033 unprotected first-round pick the Wolves gave up could haunt Minnesota, but that's literally 7 years away. 7 years is a long time. In 7 years, the landscape of this team and this league will look nothing like it does today. The Wolves are betting that 7 years from now, they'll have a championship banner and won't care about a late lottery pick. If it doesn't work out, things could go south quickly, now that the Wolves are basically out of draft picks and have sent the Hornets a few first-round swaps. There's no safety net, no stockpile of assets to rebuild around if this goes sideways. The Timberwolves are, in the most literal sense of the phrase, all in. So that's who LaMelo Ball is. He's the most talented playmaker on the market. He's a former Rookie of the Year, a former All-Star, a player capable of turning a 4-14 team into a winning franchise. He's also a player with an ankle history, a defense-optional attitude, and shot selection that makes statisticians nervous. He's all of it, all at once. At the risk of being dramatic, there's a world where this trade ends up, with Connelly fired and Edwards forcing his way out of Minnesota. That's not our prediction, but it's not fiction either. It's a real possible outcome when you make a bet this size, which is exactly what makes the next few months and the next few moves so important to watch. LaMelo Ball was not the last move. The ink wasn't even dry on the trade agreement when John Krasinski of The Athletic made that clear. He wrote on X, "The Wolves do still have other moves in the works. They need a power forward, and they need more shooting. I am told that they are not trading Dante DiVincenzo. The work continues. The work continues." 3 words that tell you this rebuilt roster isn't finished yet. With the Timberwolves trading away both of their power forwards in Reed and Randall, they're now on the search for a starting power forward to pair with Rudy Gobert in the front court. The Wolves can look to trade either of their expiring contracts, the newly acquired Josh Green, or the injured DiVincenzo, to add a player that better fits their needs. Minnesota does have the flexibility to round out the rest of the roster, with 3 open roster spots that will need to be filled. Let's talk about what that need actually looks like right now. Losing Reed and Randall leaves a gaping hole at power forward. They're surely going to address that in free agency, or perhaps through another trade that nobody sees coming. As the roster is currently constructed, McDaniels would be forced to start at power forward, with LaMelo, Ant, and Ayo forming a 3-headed backcourt. That's a lot of guards. And while the offensive upside of 3 guards who can all create and shoot is undeniable, the physical mismatch problems against big, physical Western Conference front courts are equally undeniable. Losing Reed is painful for passionate Wolves fans, but Ball addresses Minnesota's biggest need at point guard. Not only do they add one of the league's most prolific 3-point shooters and facilitators, but they've positioned Edwards to move back to the 2 guard, where his catch-and-shoot abilities will be maximized. Bottom line, Ant just got more dangerous. That repositioning of Edwards alone is a significant upgrade. The Ayo Dosunmu piece also matters more than people are giving it credit for. Around the same time the Randall trade was announced, the Timberwolves also agreed to a 5-year, $112 million contract to keep Ayo Dosunmu. Dosunmu is 26 years old, coming off a season where he shot 41.4% from 3 on good volume. He's the 3rd piece of a backcourt that now has Ball running the offense, Edwards as the closer, and Dosunmu as the floor-spacing glue guy. On paper, that's a legitimate starting 3 in the backcourt. Ayo at 41.4%, Jaden at 41.2%, and Ant at 39.9% were all elite three-point shooters last season. Throw in TJ Shannon at 40.8%, Josh Green at 42%, and DiVincenzo at 37.9% when he's healthy, and Minnesota is suddenly one of the most dangerous floor-spacing teams in the league. If Ball can put those shooters in rhythm, the way he put Charlotte's shooters in rhythm, the offense could be genuinely unstoppable on a good night. But DiVincenzo's situation deserves more attention. Julius Randle and Naz Reid have been traded, and Donte DiVincenzo is going to miss most of the 2026-27 season, recovering from a torn Achilles tendon. So the guy who shot 37.9% from three and provided the most reliable off-the-bench scoring punch isn't going to be available for most of next season. He's recovering. That's a real depth hole, particularly in the playoffs when rotations tighten and every healthy body counts. Minnesota insider Krasinski said the team still has other moves in the works, but the one player they will not move off of is Donte DiVincenzo, who is still recovering from his injury. Protecting DiVincenzo is the right move. His shooting and off-ball movement are exactly what Ball thrives on, but protecting him means the front court need stays open, and whoever fills it needs to come from somewhere. Here's where the roster math gets tight. This could backfire for a couple of reasons. The Timberwolves are sacrificing some depth to make these off-season moves. Work under the NBA salary cap. The luxury tax situation is brutal. The second apron limits what Minnesota can do in terms of further additions. They can't just go buy pieces on the open market. Every remaining move has to be surgical. The trade can't be judged fully until we see what else Tim Connelly does. With the roster, that caveat gets repeated across almost every analysis of this deal. Minnesota isn't done, but every additional move comes with restrictions. They can't go crazy. They can't mortgage the future they've already mortgaged. They need smart, targeted moves that don't cost them what they don't have. And the Western Conference they're trying to compete in, when they faced Oklahoma City in the 2025 Western Conference Finals, outside of their Game 3 blowout, they lost 4 games by 73 combined points. And when Victor Wembanyama was on the floor in the second round this season, the Spurs outscored the Timberwolves by 79 points. Those are the teams they're chasing, not teams they're slightly behind. Teams that dismantled them. The Thunder and Spurs are young, loaded, and on trajectories that have them getting better, not worse. The Wolves need Ball to step up and deliver in the postseason against teams like the Spurs and the Thunder, despite never having played on that stage. Never. Ball has never played a playoff game. He's going from the play-in tournament to potentially a Western Conference Finals, assuming everything goes right. That's a significant jump in intensity, preparation, and mental fortitude. But that's also the argument for why he fits. The Timberwolves have been in search of an upgrade at point guard and a better sidekick for Edwards since he elevated into one of the NBA's best players. Ball, in theory, could fill those gaps and work interchangeably with Edwards. Ball can be the playmaker. Edwards hasn't had to relieve defensive pressure in high-leverage half-court situations. If they can build chemistry and share, Edwards and Ball can be the best backcourt in the NBA as they create matchup nightmares for opponents every night. Every night. Not just on nights when everything goes right, but consistently, because the talent level is simply too high for opposing defenses to contain both of them at the same time. There's one more comparison that nobody is talking about enough. The Dallas Mavericks came to the same conclusion with Luka Doncic, though Charlotte probably did better in this return than they did simply because of how much younger Naz Reid is than Anthony Davis. Sometimes teams overthink these things, but remember, there were LaMelo Ball trade rumblings early last season before Charlotte's breakout. The Mavericks thought they had a better plan than building around their star. They moved him. It blew up in their faces spectacularly. Charlotte is making a similar calculation here, and Minnesota is betting Charlotte just made the same mistake Dallas made. Dallas came to the same conclusion about their superstar that Charlotte did about LaMelo, though Charlotte probably did better simply because of how much younger Naz Reid is than Anthony Davis. Sometimes teams overthink these things. Sometimes the franchise player you traded away was in fact the guy you needed to win. Minnesota believes they're on the right side of that lesson. So where does this all land? While the Timberwolves still have some additional depth question marks to address, along with several current unrestricted free agents, they're set up with a core group that has the potential to make plenty of noise in the Western Conference. And if the backcourt duo of Ball and Anthony Edwards pans out, it'll be a lethal combination and brutally tough matchup for opponents in 2026-27 and beyond. The Wolves will presumably make another move of some sort to acquire a power forward and balance their roster. Minnesota's Western Conference Finals losses to Dallas and Oklahoma City in recent years laid bare their need for a true point guard to pair with Edwards. In Ball, they went out and got one of the best, most exciting options they possibly could have. This is the Timberwolves all the way. Not cautious, not careful, not building for 5 years from now. Right now, the franchise has been on the edge of genuine title contention for 3 straight years, and every time they got close, something gave way. The roster, the health, the playmaking. Now they've addressed the playmaking with the biggest swing they've ever taken, and they've announced more swings are coming. Will Ball be the missing piece to take Edwards and the Timberwolves to the next level, or will he be the final domino that sinks the ship and drives their franchise centerpiece away? We'll start to find out in a few months when Ball and Edwards finally take the court. That's not a rhetorical question. It's the actual question that shapes everything about this franchise's next 2 years. And the clock is already ticking. Playing with such a dynamic playmaker will surely take some of the defensive attention off of the 4-time All-Star, but it also limits Minnesota's financial flexibility and ability to make trades in the future. With Ball, Edwards, and Gobert accounting for more than $100 million worth of cap space, the Timberwolves are essentially tying themselves to this iteration of the team for the next 2 seasons at least. 2 seasons. That's the runway. 2 seasons to win a championship with this core before Gobert's contract ends, and the whole equation has to be reevaluated. Ball has to stay healthy. He has to buy in on defense. He has to mesh with Edwards in a way that neither player has to shrink for the other. All of that has to happen, and it has to happen fast, in a conference where the Thunder and Spurs are both younger and more complete. This offseason isn't over. The Timberwolves may not be finished dealing. They'll still need to sort out their depth and front court rotation before opening night. Another move is coming. The power forward question is real, and whoever fills that spot, whether it's a free agent signing, a trade, or a combination of both, will determine whether this roster has enough to actually challenge in May. The Wolves will presumably make another move of some sort to acquire a power forward and balance their roster. Minnesota's Western Conference Finals losses laid bare their need for a true point guard to pair with Edwards. In Ball, they went out and got one of the best, most exciting options they possibly could have. The point guard problem is solved. Now everything else has to fall into place around it. The Minnesota Timberwolves struck twice in 48 hours. They moved Randall to create space. They locked up Dosunmu. They picked up Isaiah Evans at 33. And then hours after the draft, they pulled LaMelo Ball out of Charlotte and handed him the keys to their offense. That's 4 significant roster moves in under 2 days. And according to every reporter close to the situation, there's still more on the way. This is arguably the riskiest move Connelly has made, and it will be fascinating to see how it pans out. Fascinating is the right word. There is no safe outcome here. LaMelo Ball in Minnesota either becomes one of the great modern backcourt stories in NBA history, or it becomes the move that finally broke the Anthony Edwards era in the Twin Cities. Both possibilities are real. Both possibilities are worth watching. The Timberwolves struck again. Now we wait to see